Indeed, this is a special broadcast tonight. I'm coming to you from the home of the NASA presidential candidate, that is Raila Odinga. This is an exclusive one-on-one interview. Mr. Odinga, pleasure to have you with us on NTV. Thanks for your time and thank you for welcoming us to your home.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Odinga, you have just returned from Thika today, where your campaign speech was actually cut short because Jubilee supporters interrupted you. They heckled you. Stones were being thrown. Police had to lob tear gas and shots were even fired in the air. It was extremely dramatic, and we will just play a recap of that chaos in Murang'a. Have a look.
Wakenya tayari wameamua na itaonekana tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8. Kenya yote italeta mabadiliko. Usikimbie, hakuna haja kurudia. Hakuna haja kurudia. Hakuna haja kurudia. Wale wajinga wanakatoroka.
Well, that was the scene today, Raila Odinga, on your campaign trail, 25 days to the August 8th election. And that is the kind of violence that we're already seeing. What was that like for you as the NASA presidential flag bearer?
Well, it was, of course, interesting to see what happened. I think to put that in context, the majority of the people who were there were basically very welcoming, and they were all cheering very much and listening to what I was saying. There was a group which was standing behind, waving their hands, shouting Jubilee, 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 and they were really a significant few in number. But as you know, it takes just one person to throw a stone to disturb that kind of meeting. And this is what actually happened. They started walking away, the police trying to push them. As they're running away, the other people chased them, and then they started throwing stones. You could see, obviously, that it was an organized gang. I've been told that they've been ferried by some of our opponents.
So are you downplaying all the rejection towards you today?
I don't think you can call that rejection. That really was very far from it, because we were very much welcomed when we came. That's the reason why the people turned up. Otherwise, people would not be there. And the majority of the people who were there were listening to what I was saying, and they were responding. As you could see, I was asking questions, and they were responding. And this was a group which had been hired, which was carrying Jubilee flags behind, waving those flags. And I think their detail was to try to disrupt that meeting. And
that indeed did happen. But either way, violence was witnessed and experienced. Does this concern you, and should Kenyans be worried about this kind of a trend?
You see, so far the elections have been very peaceful, and we would want them to continue that way until the end. And that's why we really would like to urge whoever is behind those kind of organization to desist from doing it, because it can be very counterproductive. We obviously, as NASA, will not be involved in organizing violence against our opponents. We have urged our supporters throughout the country to behave themselves peacefully and allow everybody to canvass for votes. Let them speak, listen. You know, in a democracy, it says that is what is called the right to be heard.
But that hasn't quite been happening on these campaigns, because just yesterday you were in Baringo and your speech was cut down to 16 minutes, again because you were heckled. But this kind of political intolerance has been witnessed both on the NASA campaign trail and also the Jubilee campaign trail. President Uhuru was in Kisumu. I just want to play back what happened in Kisumu. Have a listen.
Tumeamua ya kwamba tutataka kuendelea na hii kazi. Haya tunawasikia. Sisi tunasema ya kwamba maendeleo tunataka ni maendeleo ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba kila kona ya taifa letu tumeweza kuhakikisha ya kwamba tuna maendeleo ya kutosha ambayo itasababisha tuweze kumaliza umaskini katika taifa letu la Kenya.
Well, Hatutaki Ruto was what the people of Kisumu there at that rally were chanting. Surely examples such as that, and also what happened today and yesterday in Baringo, is a sign of political intolerance. Do you agree?
Yeah, that is a sign of intolerance which we actually have condemned ourselves. What happened in Kisumu, we said was uncivilized. And we told our people, you can call them as supporters, but obviously we're not aware of it. They probably have an issue with Ruto. But what we're telling Kenyans is that in a democracy, that's what is called a right to be heard. I may not agree with what you have to say, but it is, I will defend unto death your right to say it. I think it was Disraeli who said it in the UK. So even if you disagree with somebody, listen to what he or she is saying. And then you have a right to respond. Or if you don't want to listen to them, then just don't go where they're coming. This is our position. In Baringo, actually, I don't think it has been properly reported. Because when we arrived there, we were very well received. And we started addressing, I spoke myself first, and I finished. Then the next to speak was Isaac Ruto, who also finished. And then Musalia. We did not cut our speeches short. We were even in a hurry because we were still having another rally in Eldama Ravine, where we were going to. There was that shouting by the crowd, but they were not violent. The bigger part, which was nearer the dais, was listening to what we were saying. So it is not true that we cut my speech short. I finished what I was saying, and Isaac Ruto also finished what he was saying. And then Musalia also finished.
So at this stage, do you think Kenyans have anything to be worried about as the campaign trails continue and as we draw closer to August the 8th?
We just would like to urge our competitors to continue to ensure that they rein in their supporters so that this campaign can continue to be peaceful. I think it has been very peaceful. And that is how we want it. And also we want the election day, the D-Day, to be a peaceful day. So I think this might be an excuse to try to bring the police out that there's going to be violence, which would be very unfortunate, because the moment the people see uniformed people out on the streets, they get scared and they will not vote. That, of course, will help our opponents. So we ourselves will not organize any gangs or any thugs to disrupt rallies of our opponents. We want to engage them on issues. We will let there be a proper public debate, as has been going on right now.
So we should not expect to see any, heckling or any violence at any Jubilee rallies where your supporters will be present?
So definitely.
Okay, we'll come back to the issue of elections in just a moment, but something else that is very key that took place today is the tragic terror attack that took place in Lamu. Al-Shabaab struck. 3 people have been killed. The permanent secretary for the Ministry of Lands was shot. She has survived. And this was after a Prado was hijacked. So Al-Shabaab and terrorism is still very much alive. This is a key issue that needs to be addressed. If you were president, how would you address this kind of terrorism?
You see, it is really very unfortunate that it would come to this. As you remember, when I was Prime Minister, jointly with the President, we took action when, remember, some tourists were abducted from Lamu at the time. And we took an action to send our troops beyond the border, what we called Operation Linda Inch. This was basically meant to protect our borders from infiltration by the terrorists coming from Somalia. But then when we saw that by just pushing them backwards was not going to solve problems, because their main supply route was the port of Kismayu, which was under their control. We asked the international community for support, which was not forthcoming. And we therefore decided to use our own defense forces to liberate Kismayu. And through using the Navy, the Air Force, and the land forces, we liberated Kismayu. And then we should have actually retreated back to strategically defend our borders.
So you mean withdraw troops from Somalia?
And give strategic backing to the AMISOM forces which are in Somalia. That has not happened. Instead, our forces have been rehatted and made part of the AMISOM troops in Somalia. Of course, the reason is that there will always be retaliatory attacks. That's the reason why AU had said that bordering countries should not have their forces in the neighboring countries.
So at this stage, with what is happening, if you were in power and the leader of the nation, what action then would you take? Because clearly your initial plan didn't work.
We have said this so many times before that we will withdraw our forces and bring them to protect our borders, and then give the strategic backing to the AMISOM troops which are inside Somalia. This is what we are going to do. Because every country takes an action in its best national interest. And we don't think that our best national interest is served right now with our troops inside.
And how soon would you intend to do that?
Of course, we will be attempting. You know, the current government does not have a withdrawal plan. They don't have a timetable for withdrawal. So
do you have a timetable?
We will negotiate this with the AU, with the international community, and agree on how our forces in Somalia are going to be replaced, so that there's no vacuum that is left there.
Okay, all right. On that note, it's time to take a quick break right here on NTV. There is still so much more to discuss. This conversation we've so far covered political intolerance and insecurity, but after the break, we'll talk rigging claims. Welcome back, and thanks very much for staying with us on NTV. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi, coming to you from the Karen home of NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga. And just a quick correction, the PS El Maui that was shot today by Al-Shabaab is in fact the PS in Public Works and not Lands. All right, so Raila Odinga, let's talk about the upcoming election and rigging claims. Kalonzo Musyoka, one of the principals of NASA, said that Jubilee agents are buying ID cards from the people of Lower Eastern in a bid to rig the election. What is the basis of his comment that Jubilee agents are buying ID cards from the people in Lower Eastern. Is there any proof?
First, before I go there, I just want to say Pole to the PS who was wounded today in Lamu. And we hope that he or she will recover quickly. Regarding these remarks attributed to my running mate, Honorable Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, there is evidence all over the country that people are moving around buying ID cards. And as you know, this is not the first time this is happening. In the last elections, ID cards were bought, particularly from what were then called strongholds by agents of the state. It's done by chiefs, it's done by the agents of the county commissioners and so on. And these were kept away until after elections. Like President Kisumu, thousands of ID cards were found after elections, abandoned somewhere. But the reason was that these people were being disenfranchised, so they cannot participate in elections because it's a requirement that you must show your ID card.
Right.
Now they are taking advantage of the poverty of the people around the country.
But where is the evidence? Where is the proof that this, in fact, is happening this time around?
We can show you tomorrow 5 to 10 people whose ID cards have been bought. They are, they sell it for 500 bob, 1,000 bob, because they want to put food on the table. And we are telling our opponents that this is unethical, it is primitive, it is awkward, it is bad. It's not something that should be happening.
So you're saying that you actually do have proof and that you can share that proof with us?
We have even raised this issue with the IBC, and they are mum. They're not speaking about it. But we have reported the matter to the police, and we have even issued press statements. As you see us going public the way Honorable Kalonzo is doing right now, it is not something that is far-fetched. It has been happening. It happens in Ukambani, it's happening in the coast, it's happening in Nyanza, it's happening in the Western, what they see as the NASA strongholds. And we're telling them, let us compete fairly on an equal, fair platform.
So why are you continuing to participate in this if you already believe that this is an unequal platform?
What is happening?
No, they will try. But you see, majority of Kenyans have already made up their minds. If you look at the country, and we've been all over the country,
very quiet about it.
I'm
not sure
she's
not feeling well.
And we don't want to let them down.
She's not feeling well.
That's why we will remain
Senior,
and we will also try to protect our votes. They will try to reduce the numbers, but they cannot reduce the numbers very significant.
She's good.
But they will stop at nothing. Apart from this, as you know, they've also been trying to manipulate the IBC. So we will continue to highlight this. We are actually expecting that some action will be taken by the IBC to protect the vote.
And what if no action is taken?
Of course, we can also go to court.
Okay, and I'll come to that point about NASA going to court, because there are already many court cases. But you say that Kenyans have already made up their mind. Have you already made up your mind that this election is going to be rigged? And I'll just refer to a couple of tweets that you posted about 2 days ago. They'll come up on the screen in just a moment. One of them was, Mr. President, don't dare think of rigging the forthcoming election. Don't ruin our country for your selfish interests. And another tweet that you posted read, having had the experience of 2 very tainted elections, we are fully prepared to protect our vote and avoid electoral theft. So are you paranoid that this election is in the process of being rigged?
It's not a question of paranoia. It's a question of reality.
So do you believe then that it is being rigged?
No, we have even, remember I went to the public and said, for example, that there was a meeting taking place at that time at Embakasi Barracks, where officials of the government read here the regional coordinators and some county coordinators, together with some police officers and administration police officers, together with military officers, who are undergoing a kind of a special training, supposedly to interfere with elections. They did not deny, because I even challenged the media to go there at that point in time and find the meeting was taking place. They did not deny it. You saw the Minister for Defense coming out publicly to say that they have just been preparing themselves to organize themselves on how to protect the country and ensure peace during the elections. It is never the responsibility of the military to deal with internal security. That is the work of the police force. The military is supposed to defend the country against foreign external aggression. And if the president wants to deploy the army under the constitution, he has to get parliamentary approval, even if you want to send them for combat outside. Like when we send our troops to Somalia, I first, as a prime minister, had to go to parliament and move a motion seeking for authority of parliament for us to do so. So as things stand right now, the president has not sought parliamentary approval to deploy the military. And we are basically warning him that if he dared do so, he will be doing so illegally. And the consequences will be very grave. And we have also told the military not to allow themselves. Our military has been very professional.
What do you mean that the consequences will be very grave?
Because it will be a breach of the constitution. And if the president violates the constitution, we don't have a country.
So therefore, based on everything you're saying, give me a yes or no answer. Do you believe that this election is being rigged?
There are attempts to rig these elections. They are trying to rig them, and that we are trying to stop them from doing it. But of course, they keep on coming up with here and there machinations to try to rig, and they are coming up with some eventual plans, what they call their exit plan. There's plan A, there's plan B, there's plan C, as we know. And you know that I used to co-chair the National Security Council of this country. So when I talk, I just don't talk hot air. I talk from concrete information and evidence that I have.
Okay, you also tweeted that President Uhuru Kenyatta appears to be preparing to reject election results because he knows he will lose. Don't destroy our democracy. The president, however, has said that he is ready to stand aside for a peaceful transition if he is indeed beaten. So what evidence do you have that he is preparing to reject the results?
You see, they keep on, it's just with double speak. On one hand says that I'm ready, I once lost and I accepted, and so on and so forth. But on the other one, they say, in the unlikely event that we lose. That's a very loaded statement. And the other one is, we beat them when we were in opposition, they were in government. How do they expect ever to beat us now that we are in government? Meaning that we are in government, we are unbeatable. If you are unbeatable, then there's no point in us going for an election. You must accept.
But do you think you're unbeatable? Because you have said that too, yet you're going forward in an election.
No, I've just said that we are, from the indications from our own polls that we have been carried out with, from very credible polling house, international. Because, you know, the local ones, we won't publish polls now because they know they're going to lie to the country. We know where we are standing. and we think that only a miracle is going to help them. That's why we are talking with such much confidence that the country is tired of the Jubilee regime. And this country is going to speak very loudly on the 8th of August. So we are saying, prepare yourselves to hand over. But we have also said that we are sportsmen. And we know that in a contest, there are two outcomes. And the event that we lose fairly, we will accept. But what we have told the IBC is that it's only IBC which will save this country by conducting free, fair, transparent, and credible elections.
At this
if
stage,
that happens, then there will be no complaint on our side.
At this stage, do you have the confidence in the IEBC? Do you trust that they will carry out free, fair, and credible elections?
We have continued to challenge them, as you have seen, in a number of areas. One, you see, elections is credible if, number one, the register itself is credible. As you know, there are still a lot of integrity issues with regard to the register as it stands right now. There are several questions which they have not answered. They first came up with the provisional figures of the people that registered, which was 19.2 million. Then it was supposed to be audited by KPMG. We said KPMG did not have the experience to do this audit. They insisted. We went to court. Then KPMG admitted to us that yes, they didn't have the experience, but they were going to hire an international firm with the capacity. When we asked them to name the firm, they refused to name the firm. So we went back. Well, they won that case, and we did not complain because you win some, you lose some. They're saying that we are always winning. We lost the case with regard to KPMG.
Right.
And then KPMG was at time, we asked how to be informed how they were doing it. They never did. But by the time when they now came up with the report, they said that there were, 89,000 dead people. But initially they said all the people who had died were a total of 1.5 million. But they had only record for 89,000.
Right.
But then the figure, instead of going down, went up from 19.2 to 19.6 million,
so,
which raises questions.
So clearly in the past, based on what you're saying, you have, like you said, challenged the IEBC. There are many court cases against it at the moment. So are you going into the election mistrusting that main body?
We really want to have confidence in the IEBC. They have not quite inspired our confidence. Like the issue of the ballot papers. Remember, we went to court, they lost in February. They appealed. Again, they lost the appeal. Then they said they were going to go do now direct procurement. They ended up still with the same company. This company seems to be the only one, according to IBC, which can do the printing of the ballot papers. Then we went again. They lost. Now they're saying, oh, they don't know how to deal with the issue of public participation. They have now again appealed. The IBC, because I believe that there's something sinister, some people ate commissions from this company so that they cannot leave this company. The court was very generous to them. Said, yes, we allow you to print all the other 5 elections at garage. Only the presidential elections, ballots, should be printed somewhere else. And we told them you can do single sourcing.
We are so close to the election right now, and we will, of course, know in the next day or so about the way forward with the printing of these ballot papers. But if things do not sway in the direction that you want them to, then what? Because you are a presidential candidate. You will be on that ballot paper.
But the IBC still has time to get these ballot papers printed elsewhere. Just want the country to know this. In the past, the campaign period was only three weeks. People used to present their nomination papers to the Electoral Commission, and then they had only 3 weeks of campaign period. In that 3 weeks, the Electoral Commission would procure the ballot papers. And they were not printing only one. They were printing civic, parliamentary, and presidential ballot papers. So we still have more than 21 days. So the IBC can still procure this and give order to other companies. We've given them countries. We told them you can procure another company from Germany, from
but
Belgium.
if they do not, and for example, if they do not look into other issues that you've brought to their attention, for example, the claims of vote rigging, are you going to go into the August 8th election mistrusting the IEBC, the body that you say is the only body that can save this nation?
You see, there is a provision for having this election, I mean, voter identification electronically, in other words, through biometric system. If the EVIDs, what is the electronic voter identification devices, are functioning properly, then that will actually eliminate the possibility of ghost voters, dead voters resurrecting, voting, and then going back to their graves through BVR. And if we can get an assurance from the IBC that that is going to be the case and that nobody is going to be allowed to vote unless they are identified biometrically, or there's a proper agreed mechanism for alternative identification. Like, for example, we gave them the manual of Ghana, how they did it in Ghana. In Ghana, if you went to vote and the machine rejected your biometrics, then you produce your ID card, and your number is keyed into the machine.
Right.
And if the machine identifies you, your picture will pop out. Then you're identified, and then there's a form you complete, and it is countersigned by the agent of parties, and you're allowed to vote, and the record is that you voted, you are identified manually.
Okay, well, clearly you are still counting on the fact that there is still time ahead of August 8th. So it is a matter of waiting and seeing what comes out of that and how you choose to react. Let's just briefly touch on a couple of issues related to your manifesto, which many have argued is a failed document, one that is very dreamy, that borrows heavily from the Jubilee manifesto, and one that doesn't really have tangible ways of bringing change to this country. A lot of what you seem to have proposed in the manifesto doesn't say how you will bring about that change. Corruption is a key issue that, of course, is critical to the entire nation and you as NASA. But as the former Prime Minister, you failed to win the battle against corruption then when you were in government. How do you plan to execute the fight against corruption if you become president?
First, let me correct you by saying that, that our manifesto is a copy of the Jubilee. Nothing could be further from the truth. So Jubilee launched their manifesto today, and we launched ours the following day. We were supposed to have done it earlier, but for what had happened that time, that's why. So we could not have had time to borrow Jubilees. And we are completely the opposite of Jubilee. So we could not be copycatting Jubilee at all. The two manifestos are based on completely different premises and principles.
There are, in fact, though, many similarities. But if you say you didn't copy, then we'll believe you on that one. But let's talk about the issue of corruption.
Yes. First, you need to know that the Grand Coalition, what it is, a coalition, we were two parties that had come together because of the special circumstances, and that signed an accord which brought peace to this country. So no party could work without the cooperation of the other. We were different in terms of ideology with our partners. So there were some times when there was a lot of tug of war. You remember sometimes matters had to go to parliament. For example, when it came to appointment of key constitutional offices. On corruption, you remember there was a time when I suspended 2 cabinet ministers, and they were reinstated by the president on the ground that there were no consultations. Of course, there had been consultations, as it were. So what we have agreed on now in NASA, and this is in our coalition agreement, is that first, nobody in government, including the principals, will be allowed to do business with government or be engaged in private business. This, even the Public Procurement Oversight Authority does not allow public servants to engage in business at all. This, of course, is happening in Jubilee. It is from the top coming down. And there's always the conflict of interest. This is why we have this problem, because everybody else is saying that if it's being done from the top, where you know me here, we will first have the political will to fight the corruption. We will give the Auditor General and the Director of Public Prosecutions power to do their work properly and to rein in public servants who are not doing their work properly or who are engaged in corruption. This country is very high in terms of corruption index by the standards of the Transparency International, not because we don't have enough laws, not because we don't have institutions. What is lacking is the willpower, and the buck stops with the president.
All right, and it's interesting that you say that, you talk about political will, especially coming from the NASA coalition, because the very own NASA principles themselves have in the past been mentioned, just mentioned in corruption cases. For example, Musalia Mudavadi linked to Goldenberg, Moses Wetangula linked to the sale of the Tokyo embassy, yourself linked to May's scandal, and Kidero, who's not part of, obviously, the NASA principle, but he's running for the governorship of Nairobi, has been mentioned in the collapse of Mumia. So there hasn't been any, concrete truth to this, but there has been plenty of mentions. What do you have to say about them? Because these are the men that you are surrounding yourselves with.
Smriti, there's a difference between mentioning Smriti and Smriti being guilty of an offense, okay? They always say that you are innocent until you're proved guilty through the due process. The Tokyo embassy case, which you're referring to, with regard to Honorable Wetangula, was investigated. In the end, it is the officials at the embassy in Tokyo and the permanent secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs who were arraigned in court. Wetangula even stepped aside for investigations. He was not found guilty. But these people are bringing these issues just politically. Honorable Mudavadi was mentioned in the Goldenberg. I even myself talked about him. But when investigations were carried out, it was found that Mudavadi is the one who started the process of stopping the Goldenberg when he became the Minister of Finance. So how does that become corruption? Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has been mentioned several times on this Yatta farm and so on and so forth, and he has explained it very well, how this came about. You're talking about May's scandal in the office of the Prime Minister. First, the two officers in my office were the ones who were mentioned, not me. One was my chief of staff, one was my permanent secretary. I asked them immediately to step aside. And the PricewaterhouseCoopers, which did the investigations, eventually exonerated them. Claudio Mondi only gave instructions to the NCPB on the basis of cabinet instructions, cabinet approval. And eventually the cabinet minutes were made available to PricewaterhouseCoopers. And Claudio Mondi was completely exonerated. The same thing with Mr. Isahakia, my permanent secretary. His name was never mentioned, but I myself took action against a minister whose name was adversely mentioned, that he had authorized other members of parliament to take maize from the NCPB and sell.
But isn't it interesting that, you know, when investigations are carried out, a lot of government officials who are mentioned in cases are in fact never found guilty, or if they are accused of being guilty, none of them actually end up, you know, behind bars as they would do in many countries across the world.
Because the institutions are not allowed a free hand to work. There's always interference from above.
And that is corruption.
Instruction. And I'm saying that is what is not going to happen in the NASA government. That's what I'm not going to allow to happen under my charge. I will not, for example, convene a meeting in State House to talk about corruption and then exhibit inability and say, I've done this, mnataka nifanye nini? I say, if you're defeated, then just pack up and go home. The buck stops with you, Mr. President. You are the president, nobody else. So if you can't do it, there are other people who have the ability, the courage, and the willpower to do it. And I can assure Kenyans that I will do it.
Okay, something else that you have assured Kenyans is about economic stability. Let's just listen in to a clip where you talked about possible ways of improving the lives of Kenyans. Listen in.
Tumesema ndani ya siku 90 gharama ya maisha itarudi chini. Hiyo bei ya unga itarudi chini. Sio hii yawa jamaa ambayo wanafanya tu kwa sababu ya kampeni.
All right, so in that clip, we heard you talking about the cost of unga that will come down, and also you have made other promises that the cost of living for Kenyans will come down in something like 90 days. How is this possible? Surely that is a very, very tight timeline to make such a big transformation that even the current government and previous governments have struggled to do.
We have said that what we're going through right now is actually artificial because the government was warned last year by experts that the rains were going to be short and therefore there was going to be poor harvest, and therefore we're not going to have sufficient quantities of maize or cereals or staple food for the population, and that they needed to come up with contingency arrangements to cushion the country, to stock the strategic reserves so that the country would have sufficient food. You saw the deputy president go on the public media and saying that, oh, the country has got sufficient maize. Those who are talking about a maize shortage are people basically who want to import maize, corrupt people, and so on and so forth. Well, that maize is not there. He owes it to the country to explain where that maize went to, okay? They exported some of it to the World Food Program to the Sudan, and now have it out to import it maize now from Mexico at 4,600 shillings per bag, when they refuse to pay the Kenyan farmer 3,200 shillings. In this period, there has to be some subsidy from the government to cushion the people, to cushion even the farmers. This happened in all civilized world. In the US and in the European Union, agriculture is mainly subsidized because that is the only way to provide sufficient food to the population. You cannot just say that you leave it purely to the market forces to decide the allocation of food to the people. So we will take deliberate action to ensure that there is sufficient food for our people in this period of time as emergency. But going forward, we will plan to ensure that the country becomes self-sufficient in food production. How will we do it? Of course, we will first ensure that farmers get seeds on time and good quality seeds. We will ensure that this fertilizer is available at a concessionary rate. We will ensure that the implement of farming, like tractors and plows, are available to farmers on time, and also extension services are working properly so that farmers know when to plow, when to plant, and so on and so forth. And also have sufficient proper storage facilities.
But in order to do something like that, and in order to provide free education that you've talked about as well, and in order to improve health services, you know, the country needs to be economically balanced. We need stability. Right now, the country is dealing with huge public debt, with inflation as well. Does the NASA government have a plan, or I'm sure you do have a plan, but how do you intend to address the inflation and the public debt?
You know, the Jubilee government, truth be told, has put this country in an economic hole by irresponsibly borrowing. Over-borrowing is actually the right word. We left the public debt at 1.9 trillion shillings. It is now over 4 trillion shillings within just 3.5 years of that borrowing spree. And they're also borrowing expensively without even a grace period. So when you reach a stage where you now borrow to pay a debt, that situation is not sustainable. So yes, we know that we are going to inherit an unhealthy economic situation, but we also have got contingency plans to deal with it. First, revenue collection has not been efficient in this country. Each time you see the KRA year in, year out, under collecting, mainly because of corruption. Remember when we came into power as NAC in 2003, the total revenue collection was only 300 billion shillings. Without increasing taxes, just improving efficiency, we doubled it just within 1 year, from 300 billion to 600 billion. And then we went to 900 billion, and then to 1 trillion. Then we now have sufficient money to finance most of our development requirements without relying on external borrowing.
On borrowing.
Yes.
All right, you have in this interview and previously, of course, as the opposition, slammed the government and its efforts, but surely in very many areas, or some areas, the current Jubilee government has succeeded and has made progress. Would you agree with that? And if so, where do you think that they have indeed made strides?
Well, I'm never subjective in my criticism. I always credit where it is due, and also criticize where I think it is necessary to criticize. First, this government was very fortunate to have inherited a very healthy situation left by the Grand Coalition government. A number of projects which they have implemented were either at the conception stage or were at implementation stage when they took over. Most of them, if you look at the energy generation, most of those projects which they have commissioned, the construction was ongoing by the time we left. when they talk about infrastructure, the ones that they have done are the only ones that they have completed, which was started by the Grand Coalition. The biggest thing they're talking about is SGR.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that SGR, in terms of conception, pre-feasibility study, feasibility study, design, survey, tendering, award of tendering and award of contract was done by the Grand Coalition government. So they only came at the stage of implementation. So it is not the idea.
So you're saying wherever they have made progress, it's thanks to the previous government that included you?
Certainly. And,
okay.
and you know that this also needs to be known that we coined the Vision 2030. And at that time, we had a think tank, which is called National Economic and Social Council, NESC, which was the think tank with experts from outside the country, from South Korea, from Singapore, from Malaysia, and then in Kenyans who are working out some of these programs. You need to know, or Kenyans need to know that I chaired the last NESC meeting in February of 2013. From that time onward, it has been abandoned. So there's been no thinking, no strategizing in Jubilee up to now. So it's been running on a reserve energy left by the Grand Coalition government, which is almost now exhausted.
Okay, interesting viewpoint there. Let's just, as we draw to a close, come back to August the 8th. Mr. Odinga, politics in this country is heavily based on tribalism. There are still deep ethnic divides in this country. What can you do to ever change this, if at all? Or do you think politics in Kenya will always be tribal?
Politics does not have to be tribal. You know, when we were fighting for independence in this country, Kenyans were very much united. There was nothing like this tribe or this tribe because they were fighting against an alien power.
Right.
The ethnicity was introduced in Kenya post-independence. And this is not something unique to Kenya. It has happened in other African countries. We say that tribalism or ethnicity is the disease of the elite. So the elite, in their competition for resources in the country, resort to their ethnicity as a tool for implementing their ambitions. The common man, or ordinary people, are just used as a ploy. So if you are being sacked, for example, because of wrongdoing somewhere, then you go back, oh, our tribe is being finished. Our tribe is being finished. So you rally the support of your ethnic community. But when you are eating, then you eat alone for self and family only. See? So just look at next door, Tanzania. You know, Mwalimu Nyerere, a man I have a lot of respect for, united a bigger country with more ethnic diversity, because they have more than 100 tribes, into one nation there, by creating higher values to which you could aspire, and coming up with what they call Tanzania. So you think first as a Tanzanian before you have thought about yourself as a member of your community.
But that's not the case here in Kenya.
In Kenya, but just I'm saying it is the Kenyan elite which led us to where we are today.
You fall within the elite here in Kenya, don't you?
But I fall among the other people. In this country, there have been two forces pulling in two opposite directions. One was the forces for retention of status quo, and the other one was the force for change and reform. So these two forces have been fighting for as long as Kenya has been independent. So you can't be on this other side of forces for change and reform. And these are the ones here are the forces for retention of status quo. That's those who wanted to step into the shoes of the outgoing colonial masters and use them to lord it over their people. The governor is gone. Now you have a new governor in State House, and now he's there to rule. But those who want to bring servant leadership, And that's why we fought so hard to get this new constitution. And you can even see right now, there is still a tug of war. Each time they want to go this other side. Fortunately, we now have the judiciary, which we revert to correct them from going back to the old ways.
So you're saying that you do not fall into the group of the tribalist elite here in Kenya?
No, I am part of change.
Okay.
I'm not part of the status quo.
Right, so that means you don't infringe that onto your supporters?
Not at all, and you can see that even last time, whenever I've gotten votes from all communities in the country. I'm elected, voted for, not in equal number or measure.
Okay.
But you can see that I receive votes across the board.
All right. One of the things that Kenyans are particularly concerned about as we get closer to August the 8th is a lack of peace and violence breaking out. President Uhuru Kenyatta has stated that he will concede defeat peacefully if he loses this election. Can you say the same? Will you concede defeat peacefully in the event that you lose?
I still wanted to say something about this ethnicity issue.
Okay, go ahead.
That, you see, it's been used in some part of the country to try to demonize Raila and depict him as anti-people. Like when I go to Central Province, I tell them, look, I've been portrayed here as an anti-Kikuyu. But what reason do I have to hate Kikuyus? They are Kenyans, and most of my friends are Kikuyus. And I've said we were detained with Kenneth Matiba, Charles Robia, fighting for change and multipartyism. We've been working with Paul Mwite all this other time. At that time, I said Kibaki Tosha. I knew he was a Kikuyu. So this ethnicity is just used by elites to divide the people and demonize other people. So, and I say I represent the opposite. I want to unite all the people of Kenya and create a proper nation state.
Well, speaking about uniting Kenyans, that depends a lot on your reaction in the event that you do not win this election on August the 8th. Do you commit to conceding defeat peacefully on August 8th?
But I thought we've been there.
Just to recap, because it is an issue that Kenyans are very concerned about, based on past elections that you have been part of.
Smriti, I thought I told you that we are sportsmen, and we know that in a contest there will be a winner and a loser. And we say that if the elections are free, fair, and credible, and we lose, we have no problem. Last time, remember, we challenged the results because we didn't believe that we lost. But we used the legal mechanism. We went to court, to Supreme Court, and put up a case. And when the court said that our evidence was filed out of time, and then ruled against us, we accepted. We said we don't approve, but we respect the ruling of the court.
All right.
We are Democrats.
And very briefly, you have the opportunity to be on a stage and contest with other presidential candidates, but you have pulled out of the upcoming presidential debate. Why is that? Are you afraid to be head-to-head with Uhuru Kenyatta if he does participate?
I've never said that I'm afraid. We say that we wanted a structured debate, and that's why we say that there must be some agreements. And we don't want to repeat of what happened last time. When we went last time, we were 8 candidates. And then you are asked a question, and then they go. By the time they reach the other person, it is more than half an hour. By the time they come back to you,
okay.
And we said there was no debate.
All right, well, I'll give you the...
So you don't want that kind of charade.
All right, if that's your outlook of it. Just as your closing remark, Raila Odinga, why should Kenyans vote for you? I
have said that I represent change. And I would like to see Kenya move from the league of poor third world countries to the league of developed economies. And I'll keep on giving example of Kenya versus South Korea. That at independence, we were almost at equal, at par, in terms of the GDP, in terms of per capita income, in terms of poverty levels, in terms of industrialization, and so on. And 54 years after independence, Korea's economy is now 45 times bigger than that of Kenya. And I say that this does not have to happen, that if you can answer the question of what did the Koreans do right and what did we do wrong, then you are in a way of answering the question of our underdevelopment. And unless we change course and tact, even if we continue this way, 100 years later, we'll still be here. So what I've done, and tomorrow I'm launching a book, I've put in paper a small booklet. It is titled The Quest for Nationhood, a roadmap to our future. Okay? And I'm saying how Kenya can recover lost ground and achieve prosperity for all. And in here, I'm addressing the Kenyan youth. And I'm actually starting from what do we mean by development, you see? Mm-hmm. And then why have we not achieved it? And then I'll say our new constitution. Then I talk about the economic development, two different journeys.
Right.
That the journey of Korea and our journey. Mm-hmm. There have been two different journeys, and why. So, and I end up by saying that the Kenyan dream is actually realizable. And as coined by founding fathers, you say, the Lord, bless this country of ours, justice be our shield and defender, may we dwell in unity, peace and liberty, plenty be found within our borders.
Right.
I believe that is realizable, and I've put it here.
And you believe it's realizable because of you. If, however, things don't go to plan on August 8th, is that the end of your political career? Because you fought a long, hard fight.
Yes. First, let me say that I'm going to launch this book tomorrow.
Yes, okay.
But then, no, the life does not end with Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga is not Kenya. See, I just want to be a servant of the Kenyan people. And that's why I'm asking them to try me, that they will see a difference. And I have had opportunity in the small way. When we came in as NAC, they saw the difference we made. Mm-hmm. When I was in charge, before that I was in charge of Ministry of Energy. I brought reforms there.
Right. But going forward, will you continue?
I don't have to continue as an active politician, but I can be an advisor.
Okay.
Okay. I'm around. I'm a career politician, and I'll be available in many ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, Raila Odinga, thank you very much for your time and for joining us right here on NTV.
Thank you, Smriti. Thank you very much.
All right. With me here at his Karen home, the NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga, speaking to me exclusively one-on-one about the campaign trails, rigging accusations and claims, and of course his manifesto and the way forward come August 8th, the 2017 general election here in Kenya. Thanks very much for watching.